guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is a cake pop tutorial. These are all for me, hence the no apron and kind of hair doing whatever it wants. So yeah, when I'm baking for myself, I don't typically worry about aprons and stuff. Plus I'm only using chocolate, so I'm hoping that I won't get it on my outfit, fingers crossed. But I'm going to be showing you how to make cake pops. So the moulds I'm going to be using are ones that I sell on my website, little plug. The website will be linked down below if you're curious, but I'm going to be using the Geo Lolly mould and the Geo Gemstone. And then if I have any chocolate left, I'm not quite sure if I will, then I'm going to use these little spheres, but I'm going to do half and then flat on the back. But they might have to be solid chocolate because I'm not sure if they're too small. So I've melted my chocolate already because I know this is a tutorial, but I felt like I didn't need to tell you how to, or show you how to do that. I thought I can tell you. So I'm going to quickly run through because there is like tempered chocolate, non-tempered, etc. So we have 3 little bowls, and what I basically did is put my chocolate chips into the bowl, and then I do mine in 25-second bursts until it is half melted. Then I mix it as much as possible to try and get the melted chocolate to melt the ones that aren't, if that makes sense, because the melted chocolate will be warm. Then the few chocolate chips that aren't melted, they'll then hopefully melt. I believe tempering chocolate, which I don't specifically do, I just do what I do and it seems to work. But I believe tempering chocolate is obviously where you keep it under, I think it's 31 degrees. And what you do is once the chocolate that you have in your bowl is melted, then you add unmelted chocolate into that and then mix it around, and that will melt without being put in the microwave or anything. But if you want a tempering tutorial, unfortunately this is not it, because I don't know whether I do temper, I don't know whether I don't, but they always come out shiny, so I'm under the impression that I am tempering it. So yeah, so we just melt it for 25 seconds, that keeps it under a certain temperature, so hopefully it doesn't break the tempered state that your chocolate will already be in, because the chocolate bars or chocolate chips that you use don't melt, so that means that they're tempered. So we now have nice runny chocolate, and I'm going to be adding some colouring to this. So I've got 300-gram bowls because we're going to be doing 3 colours, and I'm not sure how much this is going to make, if I'm completely honest, because people wanted a tutorial, but I'm not the most like step-by-step person in terms of cake pops and brownies, so I make an amount of chocolate that I think will make all of them. So usually if I'm making 4 moulds, I'll use 200 grams of chocolate for the base, and then I'll use an extra 150 for the back. So when I say base, I mean the base of the mould, and then I fill it with the cake or brownie, etc. But because I'm doing these for the sake of the tutorial, I'm not sure exactly whether this is going to make 20 or 1, you know. So I've got 100 grams, and then what we're going to do is I'll make as many as I want, and then I'll let you know how many this 300 grams made. So yeah, a lot of talking there, but I'm hoping that makes sense. We're going to be doing brownie pops because I have some leftover brownie. So you just basically, I cut it into little slices and then swish it into the mould. Some people like to break it up, but mine, because it's so fudgy and like gooey, I can't just like break it up into crumbs because it's not that dry. So the colours we're going to be using is Colour Splash. If you're making cake pops, I'd usually recommend Colour Mill. We are using a Colour Mill colour because it's oil based, so it means it won't seize your chocolate, unless you are doing very pastel colours, which is hopefully what I'm aiming for, unless I add too much colouring. So these are going to be very pastel because they do have water in them, which means that it might seize the chocolate. Fingers crossed it doesn't. This is usually a hit and miss. Sometimes my chocolate seizes, sometimes it works perfectly fine, which is why I'm trying to move over to Colour Mill, because I'd rather it just not have the risk of seizing at all. But yeah, that will be why your chocolate goes hard. It's because your colouring has water content. That's why I would say don't use any supermarket colouring at all, because they are largely water, whereas this is like a gel, so it's very little water content, so that's why you can get away with it a bit more. But yeah, so we're going to be colouring our chocolate, so I'm going to start time-lapsing, and then you'll get to see the whole process of making these, how much freezer time, etc. I'll put all the timings on the screen so that you can see how much freezer time we need, how much just setting time we need. Yeah, so I'm hoping that this is useful for the people that have requested it, and also it gets you a chance to see my moulds in action. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we're going to get right into the time-lapse. So here I am just colouring the chocolate, so I'm adding kind of like a pea size in of each colouring until it gets to the point that I want it to. So we're going to repeat that for all 3 colours. So I'm currently doing the purple, and then I'll move on to, I think it's the nude and then the pink. And we're going to start putting that into the mould. So you just put a teaspoon at a time, and then you gradually hit it against the worktop or table that you're using. So if you use that technique, it typically flattens out the chocolate, which you'll be able to see. So you can put a lump of chocolate in there and then hit it against the worktop, and then it will flatten it out for you. I'm just adding as much as I need to cover all of the base of the mould. So this is the geometric lolly mould. This is available on my site, and it will have a lollipop stick going in it, but you can also use it just as it is, not as a lolly. So we're just hitting it against the worktop to smooth it all out. Now I'm doing a marble one. So what you do is you put a mixture of colours. So we've put the purple in there. Now we're adding the nude. This is the Colour Mill natural colour. And then you just put little spoonfuls of that in there as well, and then you repeat the same with the pink. So we're just mixing up that colour, ready to go in. I'm using the gemstone mould first, and you use the same method where you smooth it against the sides and make sure that there's no mould showing through the chocolate. Then we're doing a purple one, and then we'll be doing a pink one as well. So I'm just smoothing that out so that you can't see the base of the mould, and hitting it against the side to flatten any excess. Then we're going to start on the marble. So I'm putting the nude, and then I'm also making nude little spheres. So these are solid chocolate. They don't have any cake in them, just because the mould is too small. And I believe this mould was from Amazon. I don't stock this one on my site. Then we're moving on to the pink, so we're just putting a pea size in that, colouring it, mixing it to the point that we want it to, and then we're going to be adding that into our marble design so that we have 3 colours in there. And now I'm adding it to the gemstone mould. And then finishing off the marble design. So I'm just smoothing this out, and then you just add any extra chocolate to fill any gaps at the sides of the marble. And then now I'm moving on to a cream lolly, and this is going to be a solid cream, so I'm just adding the cream chocolate to that one mould. You can either use a paintbrush or a spoon. I prefer a spoon to smooth the edges. So you just smooth it up the sides of the mould, and then, like I say, tap it to get any excess to sit at the bottom of the mould and not end up with really thick sides. So once your moulds are ready to be refrigerated, then I put them in the freezer for 5 to 6 minutes. I usually end up leaving them for a bit more because I end up doing various other things, but I would say between 5 and 10 is like the optimum. It depends what setting your freezer is on. And then once they come out, you want to work quickly because obviously they've just been in the freezer. So I've cut up my brownie pieces. You can use cake. If you're using cake, then you need to mix the cake with a very little bit of buttercream, which will make it sticky, whereas brownies are naturally fudgy, so they don't need to be mixed with anything. So I've cut them into little slices, and then I'm just squishing it into the cake pop mould. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be covering the back of that brownie in chocolate once we're done, and then it will go back in the freezer. This coat, because it's the final coat, once I've done the back, I usually then leave it in there for 10 to 15 minutes and then take it out and leave them at room temperature, just because it's the final coat before you take it out the mould, whereas these are still in the base, so I find that even if you take them out between 5 and 10 minutes, they're still nice and hard because they're within the mould. But when you take them out of the mould, you want them to be nice and hard, otherwise they might break. So yeah, I would say 5 to 10 minutes for the first coat, and then if you do a second coat, because some people do, then you can put it in there for the same time again. I only do one coat of chocolate, as you would have seen, and then I start to fill it with the brownie mix. I prefer brownie mix cake pops, but some people prefer cake filled ones. It's just personal preference, but I had some brownie left over, so that's what we're using. So now I'm just covering the backs of the cake pops. So you just spoon your mix in there, and then I recommend taking either a palette knife or just a standard sharp knife, and then you can smooth this out, and then you can use the palette knife or knife to completely flatten the back of the cake pop. So you'll see what I'm doing here. I'm just smoothing that out, and then you angle the palette knife, and then you can make it nice and flat. I would usually add a bit more chocolate than I am here, but I was trying to do it within the 300 gram mark. So I managed to make 3 lollipop molds, 3 mini gemstone molds as well, and then the 2 little circles. So they were solid chocolate, and I managed to make that all with the 300 grams. So as you can see, I'm just trying to get them flat by smoothing the backs of the cake pops. So we're just taking off any excess, smoothing out the last mould, and then they'll be going back in the freezer. Right, now they're going back in the freezer. If you put them in there for 10 to 15 minutes. Right, now for decorating. So we've taken our cake pops out of the mould. I started using a paintbrush for this, obviously a food one, but it can sometimes be difficult if your cake pops aren't really cold, so it is easier to use the actual wrapper. It depends what your gold leaf, which is what I'm currently putting on the cake pops, it depends what it comes in, because if you get it loose then you won't have the wrapper, but if you have the wrapper and it comes in that, then I'd recommend using that as a tool to actually apply the gold leaf, because it makes it a lot easier, because it does want to stick to everything. That's why you can't touch it directly with your hands, because it will just stick to your fingers. So I'm just applying that all over these. You can use it to hide any imperfections. So because these were quite rushed, just because they're not on order, they're for the tutorial, it means that there's the odd imperfection, as you can see on the sides of the cake pops, where there's little bits showing through. So you can cover any of those imperfections with gold leaf, and then it will hide any little holes or like air bubbles, because when chocolate has air bubbles in it, then when they pop, it looks a bit like a kind of like a hole in the chocolate. So you can hide anything like that with the gold leaf, because that's just a case of there being an air bubble, so you can't necessarily stop that, but it's a good way to hide it if you're using gold leaf. So I'm just applying it to all the lollies, and now I'm applying it to the gemstone molds as well. So now I'm just adding a few sprinkles, so I'm just weighing up where the sprinkles should go before I apply them, and then I'm using a paintbrush and a little bit of leftover chocolate which I've got on my board, and I'm just painting it onto the cake pop, which is a good way to do it, because if you use a piping bag then you can get lots of excess. So by doing this you can add as much as you need and then apply it and stick it on. Here they are all finished. So we have our purple gemstone mould with gold leaf and a rod. Then we have our marble, which I actually love how this turned out. I've never done this colour scheme before. And then we have our nude. The gold rods are from Sprinkly UK and they're just called metallic rods. And the edible gold leaf is from Amazon. I am creating an Amazon affiliates so that you can see all the links to all my products and it's just easier for you guys. And here are the gemstone molds. So then we have the little circle ones, which are just solid chocolate. I ate these earlier and they're really, really good. And yeah, that is all of the cake pops. So that is everything in terms of finishing the cake pops. I hope that that was as like straightforward as it could be. So yeah, that was the time lapse of how to make cake pops. I gave you a little overview of what they look like, but I just wanted to give you a little talk through basically of the different designs. So let me just grab this one. So as you can see, this is the geometric lolly, and what I've done is I put gold leaf on it, which you get it in these little paper kind of like wrappers, and I use the wrapper to stick it to the lolly because it's the easiest way to get it on there. If you put it on a brush, which I always try and it always fails, it obviously wants to stick to the brush, so I would say just use the wrapper that it comes in. So yeah, this is the geometric one, so this is a solid purple one. Then I did a marble. So to do the marble, you just literally put blotches of the different colour in there, and then you smooth it up to the edges of the mould, which you would have seen, and then it creates this marble effect. You can do it with stripes as well. If you use a piping bag, then you can make stripes in them. And then I just did a nude one as well. So they've all just got the gold leaf on because I wanted them to be kind of in a sequence so that I can take photos and put it on my Instagram and they'll all be relatively similar. Then this is the gemstone mould. So as you can see, it's got all the sharp edges on it and it's also covered in gold leaf. So like I say with this one, these are all solid colours, so you just put the solid colour in there. But same with the lollies, if you want it marbled, then you just put blotches of the different colour in there. You don't want to mix it round when you do marble because otherwise you will get mixes of colours. And also make sure you mix the colour before you put it in the mould. I have tried it before where you put the food colouring in the mould just because I thought I'd try it out and it did not work. So I would say to colour your chocolate before you put it in the mould. And then there's the nude one. And then these ones were just in little sphere moulds. So they're little halves because they're meant to be cake pops, which are solid circles, but I just did the halves. And yeah, these are just solid chocolate and they're just little white ones. So yeah, that is all of the cake pops that we made. So I hope that was helpful. I would have done a voiceover. I don't usually do voiceovers, so I'm hoping that it was all right because I thought that was the easiest way to film it whilst like looking at the moulds, because otherwise I feel like if I'm talking to you guys then I want to be facing the camera, which I can't do if I'm showing you something. So yeah, that was the tutorial. I hope that answered everyone's questions. If you have any more questions about cake pops and how to make them, or any questions about the moulds, etc., then do let me know and I'll answer them down below. But hopefully this was as straightforward as it can be and it will be easy enough to follow for you guys. So yeah, if you did like, then please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you hit the bell, then you'll get notified when I go live and also when I post new videos. So yeah, make sure you hit the bell as well and comment if you found this helpful, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys!